There are some art skills which are like eating your vegetables, doing your perspective boxes, you know, even values and simplifying values. You got to stay disciplined, you got to get it right. But this topic is more like having your dessert. It's more playful, it's more just for fun. You can mess it up a little bit and it's going to be okay as long as your values and stuff are okay. I'm talking about color. And we're going to talk about painting people with color and think about what happens with the colors in people's skin and how to paint them. And what is really cool is what I'm going to talk about today, this first thing to start doing today, is going to open up this world of color to you. At least these ideas did for me. And the world became like this magical show of light and color. Like you don't need to wait for New Year's Eve for some fancy display. Just everyday life, you just see all this color bouncing around. And what's really cool is what I'm going to show you in this video is awesome, but it's photos, and screens and photos, they average down colors. There's way more color bouncing around in the real world. So to really get to grips with these ideas, it's so fun to see this stuff just all around you in daily life. Okay, and we're going to be talking about people and, you know, the colors in skin and how to paint people. But one thing to note is that there are lots of different types of reflection and things that happen with light, and skin kind of does all of them, right? So we're going to look at other objects so that we can think about these ideas one at a time, and then we'll get to skin. Okay, so this is the first one. We have this building here, and it's kind of got a matte surface, right? It's not shiny, it's not like a mirror, you know, and it's also not translucent. It's not like, you know, like a leaf where the light can pass straight through that leaf and come out the other side. So it's kind of like a gray, off-white building in the sun where the sun is slanting in, the bottom of it is in shadow. Maybe this is a nice sunny evening. I can't remember when I took this photo, but what a beautiful scene, and what is happening in the color right now. So the building is roughly speaking gray. Maybe it's not quite gray, maybe it's a slightly warmer color or something like that, but it's not got a really strong color to it. And so what happens is that the sunlight, which is a warm color, is pulling what we see this direction on this lovely color wheel. Got this color wheel from James Gurney's website, so thank you to him. So if I pick this building, the color of this building in the sunlight, right? If you look on the color picker up here, you can see it's in that yellowy orange zone. Right? So it's not a super strong yellowy orange, but the sunlight has pulled this gray surface up towards this direction on the color wheel. If I come down to the shadow, that warm sunlight is not hitting the building, and instead there's lots of light from the blue sky coming and hitting the building. There's also other light, like light that's bouncing off the road onto the building and stuff, but one of the most powerful lights that's hitting this building in the shadow is the blue sky. So if I grab, you know, color pick from the shadow, you can see now we're in the blue end of the color wheel. So same building, same surface, it's just that one part is getting hit by sunlight and one part is getting hit by the light of the blue sky. All right, so this is very, very cool. And if you go out and you want to do some urban sketching or something like that, or paint some urban scenes, then you can use this idea, right? So here's a John Singer Sargent painting, and you can see on the bridge, he's using that warm color for where the sunlight's hitting, and then just using straight up blue on the side of the wall where the shadow is hitting. And this isn't just like being fancy with color. Like this is what we see, maybe exaggerated and maybe enhanced, but this is what we see. Okay, so the point here is that when you have a surface, it has its own local color. So if the building was a sort of neutral gray and the light was a sort of warm yellowy orange, then what we see kind of ends up somewhere in the middle of that. And if the light is the sort of blue sky, then it pulls it towards that, and what we see ends up in the middle of that. So what we get is a combination of the local color, so the color of the object itself, and then the color of the light that's hitting it. And, you know, often the light can be a nice warm color, or it could be a cooler color. So sometimes people take away from this the idea that the lit areas are warm, the shadow areas are cool. But that's not the right takeaway from this. What you need to think about is, what's the local color of the object? And then what is the color of the light hitting that object? And yes, here, these planes are facing out towards the sky, so they are catching that cool blue light from the sky. But there are other shadows here, like these ones on the underside of the top of the window, right here, which are facing down, right? This plane here, so let me just highlight it. These planes on the top of the windows are facing down, and they have shadows, but let me pick the color from there. You can see that color is orangey yellow. It's very, very warm, because the light that's getting into that shadow is a warm light. So what we have is like this warm sunlight coming into the building, bouncing up into those shadow areas. And in fact, there's light, you know, bouncing all over the place in all different directions, and it's going to come in to these shadow areas. The light isn't super strong, so it's still quite a little bit darker in that shadow area, but the light that is managing to get into these bits of shadow is warm, and that's keeping those shadows warm. So if you wanted to paint this, you could have the downward facing planes with a warm color, and then you could have the planes facing out to the blue sky be a cool color, and then you could have the bits of wall, you know, getting hit directly by the sunlight. You could have that be a warm color too. So obviously when we're thinking about, you know, light and shadow, we're thinking values. How light is it? How dark is it? But what we're doing now is adding two more dials. One, and the dial I'm talking about now, is the actual color, the hue. Is it going to be a warm color, or is it going to be a cool color? All right, so coming over to this color wheel, we have like lots of warm colors up here, these kind of reds and oranges and stuff like that. And then we have cool colors down here with the blues and all of this. And so sometimes you'll have a really red object, and it will get hit by a cool blue light. And so what we see will get dragged towards the blue. Now, if the light is incredibly strong blue light, it might get dragged all the way, and it might actually appear blue or something like that. But what we're going to have usually is we're going to have this red surface. It's going to get pulled across, and it's just going to be a weaker red color because of the blue light. And you'll see that what we have in the middle of this color wheel is gray. It could be white, it could be black, but the point is it's got no saturation. So saturation level just means, is it gray, so it's got not much color in it, or is it very, very vivid and strong? So if it's a saturated red, is it a really strong red, or is it a more grayed down red? Or is it a really, really strong blue, a really saturated blue, or a more muted grayed down blue? Or is it actually just gone all the way to the middle to be gray, no color in it? And so what we're going to have is we'll have, if it's let's say we have like a somewhat muted orangey color, but it's getting hit by this warm orangey light, it might get more saturated. It might just increase in how orangey and warm it is, because the light is complementing the local color. But if it was getting hit by a color down here, like a sort of blue color, this orange would just get more muted and get more gray. So what we have now, instead of just thinking about how light is it, how dark is it, we're thinking how warm is it, how cool is it in terms of the actual color, the hue, and we're thinking about the saturation. Is it going to be a really strong red or blue or whatever, or is it going to be more grayed down? So if we look at this bus, London buses are a very saturated, strong red, but the red that we're going to get here is going to be a little bit more muted. It's going to be getting pulled across towards the blue, right? You can see actually that this red it's not it's not a red bus in all its glory. If it was getting hit by warm sunlight, it'd be a more vivid red. But as it is, it's a little bit more of a muted red. And that's because this bus is in the shadow. It's not catching the warm light of the sun. It's catching a lot of the blue light of the sky. Okay, so this is super fun stuff to look at when you're out and about. But how does all of this relate to a person's actual face? Well, let's look at someone's face in the sunlight. Okay, so in the sunlight, we've got this warm light hitting the person's skin. But in the shadows, we have some areas facing downwards, like inside this eye socket. And you can see that this is going to be, it's dark, but it's a strong, fairly strong saturated red. So on this color picker in Procreate, if it moves towards the right side of the circle, it's more saturated, and as it moves to the left side of the circle, it's less saturated. So that's how this works. And then up and down is how light or dark it is. So if I pick inside this eye socket, which is facing down, we're going to get a fairly saturated, strong color of this red inside the eye socket. So what happens is we get this warm sunlight come in. It's going to bounce into the eye socket, bounce all around inside this eye socket. It's going to get warmer and warmer because our skin is a sort of orangey red color. And so it makes the light that comes in warmer and warmer, and it's going to bounce around inside here and get warmer and warmer. And also the downward facing planes, it's going to get more and more of this warm light, you know, like coming off the nose and everything like that. On this plane here, which is not downward facing, now it's outward facing, and it's going to be catching a little bit more of the blue sunlight, it's going to be more desaturated. So if you can see on the color picker, it's more across to the left. So this is in shadow here, this plane right here is in shadow, but it's more grayed down in here. So it's more grayed down, so it's kind of like this. Whereas in this section of the eye socket, which is also in shadow, it's darker, it's catching less light from the blue sky, but it's also a richer red. So when I come to do my painting of this, I just try to like emphasize the, mix more red into the paint in this bit of the eye socket and then gray it down, kind of aggressively in this case, to try and capture the fact that, yeah, some of these planes are facing in different directions. Okay, let's have a look at this lemon right now. So if I grab this lemon, you can see that the color coming from this lemon is very saturated, even on the shadow side, even on the bit of the lemon that's facing to the blue sky, super saturated. So why is it such a strong color? Wow, look at that. The reason for this is that light is able to come inside this lemon. It doesn't just bounce off. When it gets to the mug, it's just bouncing off. Even the egg, it's mostly just gonna bounce off the egg. But the lemon is kind of translucent. It's allowing light to come in, bounce around inside the lemon. And as it goes through this lemon, it's picking up loads of lemon color. It's getting more and more and more and more lemony. And then it comes out the other side and it's super saturated, strong color. And it's called subsurface scatter, or there may be another term for it, but this is what's happening. It's happening in the egg yolk too, right? Light can come into this yolk. It's not like completely opaque. Light can come inside the yolk, bounce around, get more and more orangey, so that even on the shadow side of the yolk, it is super saturated, maybe more saturated than on the lit side of the yolk over here, which is also going to be saturated, but less saturated. So it's actually getting more warm and orangey, or in the case of the lemon, more yellow, more lemony on the shadow side because light was able to pass through. So this subsurface scatter is super relevant to painting people. Why? Well, look, here's an example, right? Look at this ear. We have sunlight coming in. It's able to pass through the ear, pick up, we've got blood inside of us, right? it's picking up so much of that red and orangey color and is like burning hot red, like it's super saturated in there, even though it's in the shadow. Even the planes where you think maybe there's some blue light from the sky coming in, doesn't matter. It is so saturated because of that subsurface scatter that's able to happen. Now this is going to happen throughout our skin. This is the most obvious example. If you get a torch and you hold it up to your fingers, you'll see that the light comes out really red through your fingers, which is quite alarming. But we're going to have this like in the nose. We're going to have light that's able to come in and pass out of the nose, and we're going to have a nice saturated orangey red color coming out of there. We're going to have that all through here, right? Even in the cheek, there's going to be a little bit of light that comes into this side of the cheek and comes out of the shadow side of the cheek and gets really, really warm. Like here's another example. So we have some light coming into this side of the cheek, coming out of this side of the cheek, and there's a couple of things happening. It's got that subsurface scatter, it's coming in, but also it's a downward facing plane. There's a lot of light coming off the skin and bouncing back up into it as well. There's light bouncing around inside this little pocket of warmth, getting redder and redder and redder, and it means that the color that we get inside there is a very rich, saturated red color, right? Whereas if we come to a bit of shadow, which is more facing out towards the blue sky, it is way more grayed down. It is way less saturated, less of a red, rich color. And then in this plane on this cheek, it's like this rich red. So when you want to do your painting, you're going to want to put in more blue for this bit of shadow, and you're going to bring up the red in that bit of shadow because of the two things that we've discussed so far.
More amazing color insights to come in this video, but let me quickly mention this. We're getting into painting in our study group in a big way. So we start with values, how to simplify and then add nuance like this, and then we're introducing color like this or like this with a really simple and doable sequence of exercises. And to cap it all off, we have the amazing Lane Brown coming in to teach figure painting as well. So the links and information are below.
All right. So now there's one more third thing for us to consider. And, this isn't, it may seem like a lot at first, but all we're doing for now is just looking out for these things and starting to see these colors. And I always thought that I just didn't have the artist's eye. I couldn't see what, my painting teacher who taught me all this stuff, Jared, would say, you look at this building, you see the warm, rich, in the light and the cool blue, I just be like, I just see a sort of gray building. I don't understand what you're talking about. But now I really, really see it. And the more you look for it, the more dialed in your eyes become. All right, what I want to talk about right now is this. Okay, so this is a little frying pan, which is black on the inside. And it obviously doesn't have like a spot of white on it. That is a reflection. It's a bit shiny. That is the sun. Right? We are seeing the sun reflected in this frying pan. Now the color that we're going to get, this scorching white color, bright color, is the color of the sunlight. We get a little bit of that as the planes turn here on the edge of the frying pan. We're getting some of that shininess right here as well. So we're getting this kind of shininess, right? So what is that? Okay, we now need to think about one more type of reflection, which is called specular reflection. So when you look at my jumper here, this is something called diffuse reflection. And this is where light comes in, absorbs some of the color of my jumper, and then scatters all around in different directions. And so what you see is the color of my jumper, right? So this is called diffuse reflection. So if we kind of sketch what that looks like, it's like my jumper's this kind of bumpy surface, at a very small level. It's got this kind of bumpy surface, and then sunlight's coming in, or, no, in this case, lamplight is coming in, and then it hits this bumpy surface and absorbs some of the color, and it just scatters in all different directions. And so you see the color of my jumper. Okay. When you have something like a mirror, say, right? A really shiny, reflective surface. Then what we get is we get the sunlight coming in and it just bounces straight back off again. And so it's almost the same, like the light that's come in is now just going in a different direction. It's kind of unchanged. It's not picked up the color of the thing it's bounced off. It's just bounced as it was, unchanged. And so that is what happens on shiny stuff when we see that shininess. And so there's a little, a mirror is like fully reflective like this, but a lot of stuff is a little bit of both, right? It's got some elements of both. So like wood, when it's unvarnished, say, is very matte like this and less shiny. But once you add that varnish, you smooth it out really a lot, it becomes more shiny. And so it's a little bit matte, but also a little bit shiny and reflective. It's not like a mirror. You're not going to check check how you're looking in a bit of polished wood. I don't know, that's kind of fancy, but you do see like shininess and reflection off really polished, varnished wood, right? Or a car is going to be really, really shiny. Okay, so what's crazy about human beings is that we have that subsurface scatter like the lemon, we have the diffuse reflection like this jumper, and we have some of that shininess like a mirror. So you've got to combine all of these things. So as an example here, we had the subsurface scatter in the ear, right? And then we have that more diffuse reflection happening across a lot of the skin, but we also have this shininess. You see right here on the nose, we're getting this little area of shininess. Now for that shininess to happen, the plane needs to be at just the right angle to your eyes and to the light source, in this case to the sun, for it to bounce off and go into your eyes. So it's not happening across the whole face, it's just certain points where the plane is turned just right. If you imagine holding up a mirror and you're being really annoying, to your big sister or big brother, say, and you're trying to shine this, reflect the sunlight right into their eyes, like, right? And if you don't get the angle of the plane just right, it's not going to go into their eyes. So on the nose here and on here, these planes are just at the right angle to bounce off and come into our eyes. Something that's quite interesting is that with darker skin tones, we're going to have sometimes what you get with darker skin tones is because more of the light is absorbed, we get a little bit less of the diffuse reflection, means that we get more of the specular shiny reflection. And so you get even more sometimes of this shininess or reflection. And the interesting thing about that is that the color that we get then is more about the light source than the local color of the skin. So in this case up here, this color is like blazing white here because of the sunlight that's coming in and hitting, or in this bit here, there's a lot of shininess happening there. That specular reflection, we need to think about the color of the light source quite a lot. Like we saw on the frying pan as well, that the frying pan, the color of the frying pan wasn't determining what we see inside the shiny bit. That was all about the color of the sun. And if this was a different color light, if this was, a red light or something, this would be looking like a little red spot because it would be all about the light source. All right, I'm getting overexcited here. I hope that you're finding this stuff fun. To me, this is kind of magical stuff because suddenly a white building on a sunny day looks orange and blue at once. The street, which is a gray, often concrete is just gray. You think, oh, it's so dull, it's gray. Until suddenly you realize that gray is picking up every color, right? It's easy. If you look at the color wheel, if you have gray, well, gray here in the middle is the easiest one to pull in any direction because it's right in the middle, right? If you're starting off over here and you put a redder light on it, say, it's just going to get more dull. But gray is going to pick up whatever colors of the light is hitting it. So suddenly a gray street on a sunny day, the shadows are picking up the blue sky, the lit areas are getting all orangey, and it gets more and more interesting. All right, I want to show you a couple more things. All right, here's some grass. You think, why are you showing me grass is boring? Come on, man. Show me something more interesting. But look, inside the grass, you think it's just green, but the grass, it's got this really, where the light is passing through, catching that subsurface scatter like the lemon, is picking up this incredible amount of saturated yellow green, all right? And then in other spots, the grass is reflecting more the blue sky, and the color is way different. It's moving more towards the bluer end of the green. It's actually less saturated. And so inside this grass that just looks like it's green, you're getting a huge variety of colors. And this is why if you just paint grass as like a flat section of just green, it looks dead. You want to be putting in these rich, strong yellows where the light is passing through the grass, but also more muted and bluer colors for where it's the blue light of the sky is the only thing that's hitting that grass. All right, one more thing. All right, so we talked about sunny days, people in sunny days. Well, what about a different situation here? Just to demonstrate this idea that you've got to just think about what's the light that's hitting. So the person is this orangey red color, right? As all people are. But then what we have here is not like the person's not out on a sunny day, right? They're next to a window. And so what's happening is we're getting this kind of white light from the window, this quite neutral light from the window that's coming in, right? And so the colors that we're getting are not super saturated, right? They're not super strong. They are orangey red, but they're not very, very strongly saturated because the color's not enhancing the color of the skin there. But on the shadow side, like when we were out on a sunny day, the shadow side was getting more muted where it was facing the blue sky, and it was getting more warm where it was facing down. But how about here? Now it's this plane is facing out to the room, not to the blue sky. So what's in this room is like, look at this warm colored wood, warm colored table, warm colored stuff. And so the light in the room is very, very warm. It's not strong, so it's quite dark, right? It's not like lighting up the side of her face a lot, but the light that's getting in there bouncing all around, there's millions of colors in the shadows, but a lot of it is warm. So what we get on the shadow side of this person is very dark, but it's intensely warm colored. It's high saturation. So this is the gray version of that, right? So, you know, when it's dark, you might think, oh, I can't really see how saturated that is. There's the desaturated version of this dark, and there's the saturated. You see how much red and how warm it is on the shadow side right here. So how does this translate to a painting? So here's a lovely painting by artist Xiaoming Wu, and I apologize if I mispronounced it, but really fantastic oil painter. And this person is getting lit by a neutral light from the window and then the warm light from inside the room. So when we pick up this bit of skin that's facing out to the window side, it's really cool, right? It's actually kind of moving towards even the green, right? It's very low saturated color, right? It's not this warm pinky color that we're used to in skin, right? So these are the side that's getting lit by the window is less saturated and cooler. But then the shadows which are facing in towards the room are this rich red saturated color. So let me just place a proper gray next to that so you can see how rich that shadow color is. Okay, so I want to talk about and explain on this channel about painting people. And the first thing I think to start to do is to see these ideas about color and see what's happening in people's skin. So you don't just think, what is skin tone? Skin tone is like pink and pinky orange. So I paint people pinky orange. Grass is green, so I paint it green. This building is gray, so I paint it gray. You're going to think about this magical light show of bouncing colors, interacting, diving into the ear, coming out the other side, having picked up tons of red. You're going to think about how light is bouncing around this world, and it's magic. It's absolutely magic, and all you need to start to do is try to see it first. Okay, and then we'll try and paint it, which is the next challenge, later. If you want to learn this stuff more completely, then check out our study group. So we talk all about how to figure out the values, the light and dark, and then how to introduce these colors. Have a full lessons about all of this color stuff and how to learn how to paint it. Plus you get one-to-one support and feedback on the process, and it's super duper affordable. So check out the link below if you want to do that. And also we have a video up on the screen related to this topic so you can learn more. So check it out, and I'll see you over there.